Oh, actually, I watched George Heller had a good video on networking with people and the benefits of that, and I would say I agree with all of that, but I think there's perhaps more to it in my point of view. I think it's tremendously beneficial from a support structure to connect with regenerative farmers and make sure you're not wandering too far afield into Kookville with your practices, or I've leaned on George many times to because he's got some good mentors himself, and he's been doing it just I think a hair longer than me, but and I've called him up and leaned on him many times for advice, or like, hey, what'd you do in this situation? And that's been great, particularly because while we know that there's YouTubers all over the country or all over the world, it's really good to have a guy in your state or in your climate that you can talk to, because doing it here is nothing like doing it down in Missouri like Greg does. But one of the other where I think that George's thoughts were incomplete is, I think it's just as not more, but just as important to network with conventional farmers, and not to set an example, but to learn. Okay, so like some of the best conversations I have are like on Sunday, Doug and I sat around the table just talking about how he did things and why, running a conventional dairy, and how I want to do them, and what's the purpose of why you planted here and not there, and nurse crops, and the amount of information that is in these guys' heads like blows me away. I mean, it really does. Like and just because you aren't going to use it all doesn't mean that there's not value in it, right? Even if you say, well, I'll take some of this, I like some of this, but I'm not going to do that. Having an encyclopedia in your head is good, and more knowledge is always better than less knowledge. Like, for instance, I even talked to a fella named Tom around here that I know a little bit. He knows Doug, and he raises quarter horses and breaks them and gets them trained for people to ride, and he raises Wagyu cattle. And I don't think you can raise Wagyu cattle. They're a little more delicate, so I don't think you can do it the way I'm doing it, but it's still so interesting. And I don't think you could get me on a horse if you paid me. They have a mind of their own. No thanks. But why not know more about those things? And so that's where I think there's kind of an addition to the conversation that's had about networking with your fellow farmers is network, learn from everyone. There's more there than you think. I'm a big believer in you can't know too much, and you'll never learn it all from regenerative farmers. You have to go to the people around you who are doing it maybe a little old-fashioned or a little different than what you'd like to do, and learn it all. Be interested to hear what everyone thinks about that. So if knowledge really is power, then there's no such thing as knowledge you don't need. I mean, there's no place for ignorance. Now, if you're learning things that, if you're learning things that are probably outside of what we would call of good practical value, you need to apply wisdom to parse through that. But, I'm a big believer in learn everything you can and then make your decision from there, and so just a thought. Interested to hear what people think. All right. Well, behind me, you can hear the water running as I'm filling up a tank, but boy, it feels good to get onto some fresh ground. I just gave them this little piece right here. We'll be here for, maybe a week or so. When I originally put this kind of, getting back into rotation plan back together, I was thinking that we might see a crack in the weather by late March, but it's not looking that way. It's March, what is it today? March 15th. So we're halfway through, and we have a 100% chance of snow tomorrow. So it's just the way this year's gonna go, it looks like. So I just want to show you kind of where they were and where they are now, and kind of lay out the plan. This is my last man standing. I have rounds up at the hill, and I'm kind of considering doing something a little nutty and just like cavemaning it, like rolling it like Donkey Kong with some barrels all the way down from the driveway and up this hill. Be a good workout, and I guess it wouldn't hurt me. And just seeing if I can get some of that hay a little closer, and we'll move towards it with these rotations. I can't really think of anything else to do, to be honest. I'm buying hay from Doug, and I'm going to buy some squares. His squares are like a really high octane alfalfa grass mix, so it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for them to eat that in the last bit of pregnancy. But it sure is going to be expensive for me. So anyway, so this is kind of where this is a hill. On camera it never looks as steep as it is. This is one of the reasons why these little pocket farms like the one we bought, it's like a little under 40 acres. Really kind of, the land tells you what to do with it. And with as much elevation change as we have, we got a big hill up this way, and it dips way down and then rises up to a big hill that way. And so these little pocket farms really tell you grazing is the answer, because with this kind of pitch on the land, and you could I guess put some tillage on it, but it seems like it'd be a pretty tough mistake to make. You'd lose your soil in pretty quick, I think. So anyway, so we're on fresh ground, and I think they're better for it. Just gave them water. They have mineral. See, this is one of those heavy duty like rubber ones, so it can't crack, but those dogs chewed the hell out of it, and so it's barely hanging together. So I got to think of something else. I think what I need to do is I have some beef femurs in the freezer. I think Ann was going to save them for soup, but I might give them to the dogs to chew on something. But I'd say this ground is pretty well impacted without going too far. We won't come back here until we start grazing in hopefully late April, like week 3 of April. So we won't get back here until, June. Maybe even longer now that I have that extra grazing land over at Doug's. So this will get all the rest it needs to absorb this carbon and take on this manure and let the grass, express itself and push forward. It feels good to get them moving, and they were totally calm. And I do want to say, I've always been a bit leery about letting animals wander. And then I know just listening to, let's see, there's a couple of sheep farms up in Canada that I kind of watch. And this is, and they're like a mix of pasture rotation and like barn, management. And then obviously George up north, but in the winter, you can steer the animals just with a hay bale. So I took this fence down, and they were kind of wandering, and then I just started unrolling the hay, and they trotted in as meek as mice. Now obviously that won't work in the spring when the grass is everywhere, but for right now it takes the stress out of moves. They'll just go where the food is. It's awesome. So it's a good example of the wisdom in learning everything you can. Well, we are done with the easy part, which is horribly depressing because I'm out of breath and my muscles are burning. But I'm moving about, it's a smaller bale. It comes up to my chin, whatever that is. And I'm rolling it by hand. Basically, I'm gripping it low and bending my knees and doing a squat. And it rolls for about 3/4 of a turn, and then you can see it's not perfectly round, and and I'm rolling it by hand. My neighbor called me, and he goes, "Is everything okay?" And he knew I got my tractor stuck, which is right there. The back corner right there is really sunk in. I know it doesn't look too bad, but it's bad. He saw me, I guess, coming home from work, and was wondering if everything was okay. And I just kind of said, "I feel pretty silly right now, but I'm doing penance by way of rolling hay out by hand." Like, World War II era farmers probably would laugh their ass off at me, but you know, you do what needs doing. And we got another snowstorm coming, if you can see by the dark gray sky. And there's the animals behind that tree. And I only have 2 more days of hay out there. So I'm rolling a bale by hand. And when I get tired, I'm saying to myself in my head, "You did this, make it right." And I called Doug. I was walking around in my field at pitch black last night. Or was it last night? Yeah. And he said, I think he said it a little nicer, he said, "But, you know, hey." No, I said it to him. I said, "I'm realizing no matter how well I plan, sometimes you just got to eat shit and work hard." And he kind of laughed and said, "Yep, that's right." So these are the lessons I'm learning. And I'm going to call it, I'm in my sophomore season of farming, meaning it's not really my second year, but in sports, usually you have the rookie come out and he's got some flash, and it seems to click for him, and then he has a slump in his sophomore year. And that's and he's got to learn to play through it, and that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm playing through my sophomore slump as a farmer, I guess. Let's keep rolling. All right, well, there was kind of a fortunate video from Greg where he's talking about sheep and adding some dogs, and so I thought I'd put the question out there and about what I should do about Bob and Shep going on all these joyrides together. And Greg and a couple other people responded and said, well, they need to be split up. They're 2 teenagers. They're egging each other on. And, you know, the other thing, too, as I've been doing some reading is I think what happened is they bonded onto each other instead of bonding onto the sheep. So my goal here is going to be to bond Bob out onto that sheep flock all the way, and then maybe try to reintroduce Shep and do it again. We'll see how it works, but either way, I trust Bob the most, so I made the decision to pull her in, and I'm going to get a permanent run set up here until I figure out what to do with her, but I do want to use her for guard dog duties and for breeding, so I gotta figure out how to strike this balance. Yeah, so this is not ideal, but here is a pine shavings. She's got a dog feeder, water. I will, like I said, I'll be putting up some fence and making a run for her here in the yard. She can guard the yard, and so, you know, my mistakes and my assumptions keep revealing themselves as we get into this trying time of the year. And I'm going to try splitting them up and see how that works. And if Bob stays and attaches to the flock, we'll know that we did the right thing. Here, Shep. What you find there, huh? Found something interesting.